Welcome to my Grand Theft Auto Supercut. Today I'm going to be reviewing my 3 favourite GTA titles, San Andreas, GTA 4 and GTA 5. First up is... Grand Theft Auto San Andreas holds the #1 spot for being the best-selling PS2 game of all time. It was released to critical acclaim because of its huge, detailed open world that pushed the PS2 to its limits. But it's crazy to think that a game rated 18 plus was such a massive part of all our childhoods. I still remember playing San Andreas for the first time. I was at a friend's house before school, and I was blown away at how realistic this game was. That day I went home and begged to get it, but I didn't really play the game properly. In fact, I only completed this game for the first time back in 2014. As a kid, I spent most of my time in Los Santos, replaying the first 10 missions. I never really got to San Fierro or Los Venturas legitly because my child brain couldn't complete most of the missions.
All we had to do was follow the damn train, CJ!
So I chose to explore this incredible open world instead. I would use cheat codes and fly cars around the map. It was unbelievable how big and detailed this map was. I went from playing games that were level based, with each level being locked behind a loading screen, to playing this massive open world. And the map wasn't just big for the sake of being big. This map was so detailed. Each location had a different atmosphere and vibe to it, and there was so much to do. I vividly remember finding all these random activities and things to do every other day, and being blown away at how a game could be so realistic and have so many different things to do in it. And this was all without me leaving the bottom part of the map. GTA San Andreas to this day is one of my favourite games of all time. I still replay it every now and then, and I believe it's the most iconic game I have ever played. Let me explain why. Our story starts with the death of CJ's mother. His mother died in a drive-by shooting that was done by the Ballas in a green Sabre. Once hearing this, CJ decides to return to Los Santos. When CJ arrives in the city, the corrupt crash unit pull over his taxi and arrest him. The officers, Frank Tenpenny, Eddie Pawlowski and Jimmy Hernandez, steal CJ's belongings and blackmail him into working for them. They eventually let CJ go, but tell him they'll be in touch when they need him. CJ eventually makes his way back home to Grove Street. Here he is reunited with Big Smoke, and the pair head over to his mum's funeral. At the funeral, CJ reunites with his friends and family, but his brother Sweet wasn't too happy to see him, saying that CJ does nothing but run away, hinting at how he was responsible for their younger brother's death. This reunion, however, is interrupted by the Ballas doing a drive-by shooting on Smoke's car, and the gang then have to make it back to Grove Street on bikes. Once back, Carl begins working with Sweet, Smoke and Ryder to restore their gang's power in any way they can. During this time, CJ also meets OG Luke and Caesar, Kendall's new boyfriend. CJ does an array of tasks for all these people plus the corrupt crash unit. The gang's goal is to restore Grove Street's status and power, and they eventually make good progress by taking over Balla territory. With this newfound progress, Sweet decides to take Los Santos back from the Ballas. But before CJ heads over to help Sweet, Caesar takes him to a secret meeting point where they learn that Ryder and Big Smoke are working with Crash and the Ballas, and they possibly were involved in the death of CJ's mother, as they were seen with the green Sabre that was involved in the drive-by. In complete shock, CJ realizes that Sweet was probably set up and rushes over to help him. When he gets there, CJ wipes the Ballas and the police arrive on the scene to arrest both brothers. Except while Sweet gets thrown in prison, CJ gets escorted to the small town of Angel Pine in the countryside. Here, Tenpenny warns CJ not to go back to Los Santos and again blackmails him, saying that if he doesn't comply with their wishes, Sweet will suffer in prison. So CJ carries out Tenpenny's wish and completes a few tasks for him. Tenpenny then asks Carl to buy weed from the Truth so that he can plant it on the DA later in San Fierro. So Carl tries to make the money to do so as fast as possible. Here's where Caesar introduces CJ to his cousin Catalina. The pair rob everything you can think of in an attempt to make more money. They also end up in a romantic relationship despite it being incredibly toxic, and they eventually break up, I think.
Hey, what's up? Hello?
Yes, Claude! Faster, harder, deeper! Oh, yes! Yes, yes!
Catalina, you sick. Get help.
And you, Carl, you are jealous!
CJ then enters into a few races to earn more money. And here's where he meets Woozy, the blind leader of the Mountain Cloud Boys. The pair hit it off and eventually end up working with each other later on. In the races, CJ beats Catalina's new boyfriend Claude and wins his garage up in San Fierro. This garage is where the gang ends up running away to after Tenpenny tips the police off about Truth's weed farm. Once in San Fierro, CJ realizes the garage is derelict, but Kendall calms him down and tells him that they can turn it into something. So CJ goes out and recruits 2 mechanics, Dwayne and Jethro, and an electronics expert, Zero. And Zero gives Carl one of the worst missions in GTA history. Tenpenny then tells Carl it's time to plant the weed he acquired from the Truth in the DA's car, so Carl does so, and the DA gets arrested. Shortly after this, Tenpenny and Pulaski pay Carl a surprise visit, this time demanding that he follows and kills a reporter who had been investigating them back in Los Santos. Caesar then calls CJ to inform him of Ebola's car heading towards the countryside. They follow it to Angel Pine, and here's when they learn that Ryder and the Ballas are meeting Jizzy B, Thibaut Mendez, and Mike Torino, who are the leaders of the local syndicate, an organisation that is supplying drugs to Big Smoke, Ryder, and the Ballas. In shock, Carl then decides to take them all out, starting with Jizzy, then Thibaut Mendez, Ryder, and then finally Mike Torino. After killing the syndicate, CJ then blows up the crack factory that was supplying drugs to Big Smoke. But not long after this, CJ gets a strange call and is told to come to a ranch. Carl heads out there, does a few missions, and then learns that the suspicious caller was Mike Torino, who somehow didn't die in the helicopter explosion. Torino then informs Carl that he's a government agent and can help get Sweet out of prison sooner if CJ does a few missions for him. So CJ complies. He buys an airstrip and undergoes a series of missions for Torino. But one day, whilst at the airstrip, the Truth meets Carl and asks him to sneak into Area 69, where CJ steals him a jetpack. The Truth then asks Carl to use this jetpack to steal a mysterious green substance from a military train. CJ eventually brings it back to the Truth, who lets Carl keep the jetpack in return. Then CJ gets a call from Woozy telling him that he's opened a casino in Las Venturas and that he needs to come see him. So Carl heads over. Here Woozy tells Carl that he's giving him a stake in the casino, but they are struggling as the opposing gangs and casinos are messing with their business. So the pair decides to show them that they are not to be messed with. CJ heads out and does a few missions to sabotage the opposing gangs and eventually decides to plan a heist to rob their casino. In the middle of this, Truth asks Carl to go find his friends, Kent Paul and Magger, out in the desert after a crazy night. CJ then brings them back to their hotel, and it turns out they're staying at the opposing gang's casino, and here CJ gets an opportunity to get some inside information. He is introduced to Ken Rosenberg, who's a friend of Kent's. Ken eventually leads him to meet the leader of the Leone family, Salvatore. CJ decides to gain his trust by carrying out a few missions for him, but Salvatore calls for Ken, Kent and Magger to be killed as they have failed him. However, CJ pretends to kill him and the trio flee out of the state. Salvatore is incredibly impressed by CJ, which will make the gang's heist on the casino a lot easier. But whilst in Ventura, CJ meets Mad Dog, who is on drugs and has become suicidal after losing his career and manager. CJ saves him and brings him to a rehab clinic, but shortly after, CJ gets a phone call from Tenpenny telling him to come meet him. In a final attempt to cover up his mess, Tenpenny has CJ kill a DA and retrieve the information that he had on Tenpenny's work. So CJ does this and is instructed to bring the documents to a ghost town in the middle of the desert. Here, Tenpenny leaves Pulaski to kill and bury CJ along with Hernandez, except Hernandez isn't dead yet and ends up saving CJ's life, which allows CJ to chase and kill Pulaski. CJ then returns to Las Venturas to complete the heist on their rival's casino after gaining Salvatore's trust. The team pull off the heist successfully and Salvatore is rightfully pissed, but the gang return back to their casino to get to work. Not long after, Mad Dog, after returning from rehab, visits CJ in the casino and asks him to become his manager and help restore his career. CJ agrees and the team set out to take back his mansion in Vinewood. Once they have reclaimed the mansion, they then get revenge on OG Luke and restore Mad Dog's career. Then Torino somehow finds CJ again and has him do 2 final missions. CJ has to steal a jet and blow up naval ships. Then finally, his last mission is to collect his brother from prison. CJ heads down to the precinct and picks up Sweet. However, Sweet is not happy with Carl's new life. He says that CJ has abandoned the hood and neglected the gang. To prove his loyalty, CJ starts to reclaim the city from the rival gangs, and once he has reclaimed enough territory, Sweet finds out where Big Smoke is hiding. Then CJ storms through his crack factory and eventually kills his childhood friend, leaving only Tenpenny. CJ and Sweet chase Tenpenny through the streets of Los Santos, and eventually Tenpenny loses control of his truck and kills himself in the crash. And I think CJ wraps it up best.
See you around, officer.
I think this story is fantastic. CJ feels like he is constantly trying to make up for a mistake he made, which we eventually learned that it was related to his brother's death. The twist of Big Smoke and Ryder being the bad guys was unexpected during my first playthrough, but when you replay it now, you see a trail of breadcrumbs in the beginning hinting at Big Smoke being unloyal. Like how Crash are always at his house, how Big Smoke got enough money to move out of the Grove into Bala territory, and how he takes forever to order his meal right before the gang get caught in a drive-by. The characters you meet throughout San Andreas are all memorable, and I quite like the weirder characters like Woozy, who is blind and can somehow drive a car, Catalina, who just torments CJ all game, The Truth, who is a conspiracy nutjob but yet sometimes is proven to be right, and my particular favourite, Mike Torino, who defies death, knows everything about everyone, and is always able to talk to CJ no matter where he is. CJ's description of him is very fitting.
And he like the devil.
The characters and story of San Andreas are incredibly detailed, but this detail is a result of Rockstar developing such an innovative game. Rockstar started the development of San Andreas right after the release of Grand Theft Auto Vice City at the end of 2002. And it is said they took just under 2 years to develop this game. Executive producer Sam Houser said that the members of the team put an enormous amount of pressure on themselves to ensure that they would do everything possible to exceed people's expectations. Plus, this game was rumoured to have twice the budget of Vice City, with $10 million. Rockstar did a lot of work to replicate the different cities in the game. They had numerous teams in California, and they were all equipped with a camera. Each team went to a different city from the game, taking multiple photos of various locations. Everything from the fancy casinos in Las Vegas to the heart of LA's gang territory. Rockstar reportedly photographed every inch of the state. As a result of all this work, Rockstar created an immersive world by nailing the atmosphere of a 1990s California. From the get-go, Grove Street and Los Santos looked amazing. Based off the city of Los Angeles, every area of Los Santos felt different and had different NPCs and weather. Then you had the countryside, which honestly gave me nightmares. You drive out west, see some freaky looking hillbillies, and then a lightning storm would hit. It'd get dark and foggy, and you swear you saw something in the distance. Plus, it didn't help that you kept watching GTA ghost stories and Bigfoot videos earlier on YouTube. Then you'd head north to San Fierro, a different looking city to LS. This place is based off San Francisco, and here you'd find different gangs, the tram, and see the famous Golden Gate Bridge. Then you crossed the bridge to the desert, and it was much like the countryside, creepy. You had ghost towns and an entire secret government facility based off Area 51. Again, you had different weather like sandstorms and diners referencing aliens. Then you'd head over to the single city sitting alone in the desert, Las Venturas. This city is based off Las Vegas. It has the strip with dazzling lights and crazy casinos. Every single corner of this map was different. It wasn't just big for the sake of being big, it was detailed, and every state had its own atmosphere. In fact, this map was so immersive and felt so real that there were conspiracy theories being spread online about it. There were stories of Bigfoot being in the countryside and aliens being in the desert. Rockstar created a truly massive, detailed and immersive world that pushed the PS2 to its limits. Just like the story and world of San Andreas, the gameplay of this game was groundbreaking. GTA San Andreas implemented RPG mechanics into the series. If you didn't eat, CJ would go hungry and lose weight and stamina. You could increase things like body fat, muscles, stamina, sex appeal, and weapon skill by doing things like eating, working out, getting tattoos, and shooting. GTA San Andreas brought a huge catalogue of customization that the series had never seen before. There were also so many unique vehicles in this game. You could fly a jet, drive a tank, a boat, a helicopter, ride a go-kart, hovercraft, and even a jetpack. There were so many random arcade games and mini games that CJ could partake in. I just remember being a kid and finding something new every week I played this game. I was blown away at how this game would have so many random things in hidden places. It was so realistic. Playing this game felt like I was playing in real life, with no rules and cheat codes. Rockstar poured their blood, sweat and tears into this game, and it shows. This was not even close to a normal PS2 game at the time. This is one of the few, if not only, game you can play 20 years later and it still feels modern. In my opinion, this game is iconic and it became more than just a game. This game was woven into pop culture, and it's so popular it's still referenced in memes to this day. The iconicness of GTA San Andreas was inevitable, and it's all because of the detail Rockstar poured into the story, characters, development, map, and gameplay. A work of outstanding artistry, skill, or workmanship. To this day, the soundtrack of Grand Theft Auto 4 still gives me goosebumps. Wait, that's not it. That's better. The story of Niko Bellic is one of the best GTA stories ever written. His story starts with him arriving in Liberty City for a better life, but once arriving, he realizes that Liberty City is just as corrupt and crime-ridden as his hometown. Niko's story is about revenge, and how he has to learn that revenge will not bring him the closure that he desires. The player can even choose in 2 scenarios whether Niko takes revenge or not, and one of these scenarios even affects the ending. But I also love the story of Liberty City itself. This city is dark, crime-infested, and run by corrupt officials. This city genuinely feels like hundreds of people live in it. This is all thanks to Rockstar releasing 3 DLCs for this game. Each add their own cast of characters to Liberty City. Each one of these stories makes you more and more invested in Liberty City. But my favourite thing personally is that the city does an incredible job of ruining Niko's dreams.
Fuckers!
Liberty City is not the place that Roman described at all. In fact, within just 1 day of Niko being there, he had already resorted back to a life of crime, which he was so desperately trying to flee. GTA 4 was critically acclaimed when it was released in 2008, and it's clear to see why. For the time, the graphics were incredible. It was a huge step up from San Andreas. The physics were revolutionary. Rockstar's new game engine used the Euphoria physics engine, which allowed for on-the-fly animations. These made the game so much more realistic. If you hit a pole, your car would actually look like you hit a pole. If you shot a guy, he would limp around and hold the area that you shot. If you jumped off a building, your character would panic and flail around in distress. These little details made the game a lot of fun and a lot more realistic. In fact, 15 years later, this game still holds up. The story is amazing, the graphics still look good, and the game mechanics aren't that clunky. I still really like going back and replaying this game to this day. It is truly an outstanding work of artistry, skill, and workmanship by Rockstar Games, which is why I think GTA 4 is a masterpiece. Greatest? No. Amazing? No. Immortal? No. How do you describe a game that has broken records, influenced pop culture, and is still popular 9 years after its release date? Please tell me, because I am struggling just to pick one word to describe Grand Theft Auto 5. On September 17th, 2013, Rockstar would release a game that would be universally acclaimed by both critics and fans. Within just 24 hours of its release, Grand Theft Auto 5 generated more than $815 million by selling approximately 11.2 million copies. Then, 3 days after its release, the game had surpassed $1 billion in sales, making it the fastest selling entertainment product in history. That's right, Avatar was beaten by a game with a character called Jizzle.
You like that, don't you, huh? Take it all!
Not only was it a financial success, but this game would set the industry standard for an open world game, from its attention to detail, large map, huge cast of characters, gameplay, and incredible graphics. All of this would mean 9 years later, it's still better than a lot of modern day games. It was not only an incredibly successful selling single player game, it created Grand Theft Auto Online, another behemoth that is the reason Rockstar doesn't even need to make games to be profitable. And if you still don't believe me on how much of a success it actually was, just take a look at Twitch. 9 years later and it's still on the front page of Twitch. Or what about YouTube? 9 years later and people are still clickbaiting it. Even today, Grand Theft Auto 5 plays like a game released this year, when in reality it's old enough to hit the gritty. But how did Rockstar do it? Why was this game so successful? What made it so revolutionary? Our story begins in the fictional city North Yankton. Here we meet Michael, Brad and Trevor. The trio are robbing a bank, but it all goes wrong when Brad and Michael get shot, leaving Trevor as the sole survivor. Trevor believes that Michael was killed that day and that Brad was arrested, but then we are shown Michael's funeral. It turns out that Michael made a deal with Dave Norton, an FIB agent. In this deal, Dave gets to be the agent who kills and takes down the famous Michael Townley, and in return, Michael gets to retire and live his life out with his young family. Fast forward 9 years, and we see Michael has been living in Los Santos, but he is currently in therapy as he isn't happy with his retired life. After Michael's sessions, we are introduced to Franklin and Lamar. The pair are repoing cars for the corrupt Simeon in the hopes to make some money and change their lives. After doing a few repo jobs for Simeon, Michael's son Jimmy buys a car from him. The following week, Simeon tells Franklin that the kid hasn't made any payments on the car and Franklin has to go and repossess it. Franklin sneaks into Michael's house, steals the car, only for him to be hiding in the back seat. Here the two talk, and then Michael makes Franklin drive the car through the shop window after Michael offers Franklin a drink, so he takes him up on it, only for them to be interrupted by Jizzle being kidnapped. So Michael and Franklin set off to rescue Jizzle, and here Michael really starts to like Franklin, as he sees him as a hardworking kid just looking to make something of himself. Later on, Franklin calls around to Michael's house when Michael catches his wife Amanda cheating on him with her tennis coach. Franklin helps Michael chase the guy down, and the pair then tear his house off a cliff, absolutely destroying it. Except the house belonged to the head of the Mexican drug cartel, Martin Madrazo. Martin goes to Michael's house and tells him that he owes him $2.5 million, so Michael is forced to make money the only way he knows how. He contacts his old running buddy Lester to organize a heist. Michael, Franklin, Lester and some other hired gunmen rob a jewelry store to get some money, but Michael makes one tiny mistake that causes his life to spiral out of control.
Get 1,000 things every day, pal. Make sure this is one of them.
Make sure this is one of them. That was pretty scary.
Back to you in the studio.
Here we cut to Trevor in Sandy Shores, who's watching the news and he hears his old buddy's corny one-liner. Trevor, in a shocked state, then starts to doubt if Michael was even dead. He asks Wade to look for him in Los Santos, whilst Trevor and Ron take out the Lost MC biker gang from GTA 4, and then the pair take out Ortega. Trevor then attempts to set up an international drug deal with the Los Santos Triads, but Trevor spooks the Triads, which leads to them dropping their deal and starting one with the O'Neill brothers. Trevor, being the completely rational person he is,
What kind of fucking animal do you take me for? No, I didn't kill him.
Oh, fuck.
But I did kidnap his wife.
he heads over to the O'Neill's farm and slaughters every last one of them. After pissing off all the local gangs, Trevor then rubs salt in the wounds by robbing a shipment from the Lost MC gang and stealing their airship. Wade tells Trevor he might have found Michael, so the pair set off to Los Santos to figure out what happened that day in North Yankton. When arriving in the city, the pair stay with Wade's cousin Floyd.
Your cousin. Fuck. He's come to visit you, you rude fuck. Now get up off the floor and fix me a fucking drink.
But after traumatizing Wade, Trevor heads to Michael's house, and here he finds Michael, his friend who he thought died years ago. To Michael's surprise, Trevor doesn't kill him. In fact, Trevor even helps Michael rescue Tracy from Laszlo's fame or
I
shame.
want you to dance sexy, celebrity.
After this, Michael rings Dave Norton and agrees to meet him. The pair discuss what they want to do with Trevor, but instead, Dave blackmails Michael and he ends up making him work for the FIB. This is when our protagonists start to make a lot of enemies. Our three main characters rob banks, boost cars, help the FIB with illegal activities, rob from a private military, and partake in much more criminal activities. This constant string of never-ending favours and jobs eventually lead the trio to pissing off Devin Weston, Steve Haynes, Stretch, Merriweather, Wei Chang, and many, many more people. In the midst of the gang committing all these horrendous crimes, Michael's relationship with his family worsens. It gets to the point where Amanda takes the kids and moves out. But they eventually get back together as they realise they all care about each other and just accept the fact that they're a fucked up family. As well as this, Trevor also learns that Brad didn't survive that day in North Yankton and that he was the one buried in Michael's grave. This causes Trevor to speculate that Michael set them up. This further increases tensions between the two to the point you don't know if Trevor's just going to turn around and gut Michael.
What was that?
What?
What was that?
Nothing.
Ah! Asshole!
But for the most part, they still get along. At the end of the game, the trio pull off the biggest heist ever by robbing the Union Depository, making them all an insane amount of money. But sadly, not long after, Devin Weston and Steve Haynes approach Franklin and tell him that he has to kill Michael or Trevor, as they can't be trusted. However, Franklin has a third option of killing neither. This option is my favourite and I will explain why later. When you pick the third option, Franklin, Lamar, Trevor and Michael team up to take down every person that you pissed off during the story. You take out Steve Haynes, Stretch, Merriweather, Wei Chang and finally Devin Weston. To end the game, the trio all ride off into the sunset, agreeing to become better friends that won't kill each other. And that was the story of Grand Theft Auto 5. Now, a lot of people don't like the story, and after playing it again, I can understand why. The parody in the story is not very subtle. Sometimes the characters will just blatantly say something like it was supposed to be some witty commentary, when in reality it's just too on the nose.
My union allocated smoke breaks about up, so...
The story was also very hard to follow, and a lot of story beats are very rushed, to the point you don't even understand why you should care about something. A prime example of this is Stretch. Like, who the fuck is Stretch? I don't know, I've played this game 5 times, and it's only now I realise that he was the gangster who got out of jail at the start of the game, then by the end of the game he betrays you and you gotta kill him. There's literally at least a 9-hour gameplay gap between these missions. But whilst the story has its flaws, it has 3 playable protagonists and multiple antagonists, and there was a lot of fun and detail within the 31.5 hours of gameplay, and while not being Oscar worthy, I still think the story is incredibly entertaining to play when you just want to sit back and relax. While some people consider the story to be convoluted and lackluster, I think the characters themselves are pretty interesting. Michael is a retired crook who no longer has a purpose in life. He has everything he ever wanted, from family to his massive house, his boat and cars. But Michael is still depressed because there is no substance in his life. He has nothing to work towards. He also has a resentment towards his kids as he feels like they're both spoilt and entitled. Their childhood is the complete opposite of his. Then he meets Franklin, the kid he always wanted. Straight away, Michael sees himself in Franklin, a young man trying to make the most of what he's got. Franklin sees Michael as an older brother or father figure who can teach him how to make money and actually make something of himself. But then, Franklin meets Trevor. Trevor is the first kid Michael took under his wing. He sees that Michael dropped him at the first opportunity to save himself. This instills doubt in Franklin's mind about whether or not Michael actually wants to help him. Both of these men are what Franklin can potentially become. A man who betrays and leaves his friend for dead, or a man who gets betrayed. But like the ending, Franklin chooses the third option. In the end, I believe he becomes a blend of the good bits of Michael and Trevor. Well, if there is actually any good bits. He becomes skilled, successful, and looks out for his friends. This is why I think the third option is the best and the canonical ending. This is why Franklin is most people's favourite GTA 5 character. He has a rags to riches story, but he still remains humble and helps his friends despite becoming incredibly successful. In 2013, the game looked unbelievable. It had a massive map with every corner filled with detail. A map where you can drive, walk, run, swim, fly, use a submarine, shoot people, meet strangers, find aliens, discover Easter eggs, and much, much more. The gameplay was incredible. The missions felt less stale and repetitive than the previous ones in the series. They added in an array of side missions and heists, which added a lot of variety to the game. You now had 3 protagonists that you could easily switch between to give a different style of mission and opportunities. The Freaks and Strangers missions led to some interesting side content that hinted at very strange things going on within the city. This really makes the map feel like it's not just an empty, oversized video game. It feels like it was actually lived in. You had references to Scientology, Bigfoot, and even aliens. The lore of this Grand Theft Auto is incredible, and that is why it has led to so many videos speculating about what actually might be out there within the mountains of Los Santos. The attention to detail in this game is just insane. We have loads of references to the older games, and references and parodies of pop culture, all making GTA 5 ahead of its time. Even if you think the story wasn't all that great, the game was revolutionary. Few other games had this level of detail in gameplay, story, lore, world building, characters, and graphics. And don't forget, this game was released in 2013 for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. That is the reason this game is still alive 9 years after it was released. GTA 5 is massively successful, and it is completely deserving of a success. It was worth every penny, and another GTA that is worth every penny is the underrated GTA, which you can click the video on screen now to watch. Thanks for watching.